In Java, we have two kinds of types: primitive types and references. This chart talks about the primitive types and gives us an outline about them. We will talk about references later. But also keep in mind that for each of the primitive types that is mentioned in this chart, we will talk more, we will give more details. So this is just an overview to get us started. A primitive type can be either a numeric type or a Boolean. What that means, if we want to represent a number, it will have a numeric type. If it is a Boolean value, it will have a Boolean type. Let's take a look at the numbers. We have ways to represent both integers and reals. How do we do that? Through the integral type and the floating point type. If you see the integral type, you may be surprised that we have 5 different types through which we can represent an integer. This is because we can have different precision, different accuracy for our representation. So the smallest representation is a byte, which, as the name suggests, it only has 8 bits to represent an integer. And then the size doubles, so a short has 16 bits, an int has 32, something that is important to remember, a long has double that size. Now, it may be surprising to find out that the char type, which is the type through which we represent characters, is actually an integral type, a numeric type. We will talk about more about this fact when we talk about the char type in a later video. Keep in mind that the char type uses 2 bytes, but that representation is unsigned, while all of the rest of the integral types, they can represent negative numbers as well. Let's go to the floating point type and see how many we have there. We have only 2 types there. We have a float and a double. And again, the difference is on the number of bits that we need in order to represent them. For both a float and a double, we use 1 bit for the sign, and then the difference lies on how many bits we have for the exponent, 8 for the float, 11 for the double, and then how many bits do we use for the significant or mantissa, as we have mentioned. We have 23 for the float, 52 for the double. For reasons that will become clearer later, it is important to note that the default type for an integer value in Java is the type int, while the default type for a real number, for a floating type in Java, is the type double. Now, the Boolean type is a quite simple type. It only needs 1 bit for the representation of a Boolean value. And why is that? Because we only want to represent two values, the value true and the value false.